Hey, what's up guys, Mashine here, come back with a brand new video. If you guys, today we're going to be talking about what packages I personally believe you should probably be redeeming. We're going to be talking about what's the best options out there. Obviously, there's a lot of options for whatever map you're looking at. You've definitely got a pretty decent amount of different games to choose from. We're going to go over what I believe are the best including Navi and then the best not including Navi. I gave them their own category because obviously they're going to be the most popular, and if I didn't give them their own category, they would probably dominate every single one just because they are the most popular, and that's the best chance at getting a little bit of overpay with your stickers. But before we hop on into it, if you guys are looking to pick up any CSGO skins, I've got a couple links in the description. Now let's hop on into it. First up here, like I mentioned, we're going to be starting off with the games that include Navi. And as I previously mentioned, I gotta give them their own category because logically, this is probably going to be your best chance at slight overpay for the stickers. People are going to prefer Navi over something like the Sharks team or anything like that, and it just made sense so we could give some other teams some opportunities. First up here though, we're heading on over to Nuke, and we're going to be doing the grand final. This one was absolutely obvious. G2 versus Navi, the most important match of the entire tournament, the most interesting match, the one that peaked at 2.75 million viewers. Obviously, we had to go with that. There was no question about that one. Next up then, we have Inferno, and Inferno, there was nothing there for it. Moving on over to Overpass, this one I went back and forth on. I originally had Navi versus Gambit, however I went with Navi versus VP in the group stage. VP, not the most popular team, however Jame, one of their oppers, has really started to become a bit more popular with what's known as Jame time, where he's just saving his op. Next up then, we have Dust 2. I went with Vitality versus Navi in the quarterfinal here. Vitality is a team I tried to get involved as much as possible because they have ZywOo, and ZywOo is definitely one of the more popular players. I believe ZywOo, Nico, and Simple are the top three most popular players of the tournament, so we wanted to get their teams involved as much as possible. Moving on into our Mirage here, I've got Navi versus Gambit. Now the way I went about this was trying to determine which games might potentially get overpaid down the line, and the best way of trying to get overpaid down the line is kind of spreading out which teams we're using in case one of the least popular teams, now like Gambit's definitely a popular team, but they're not as popular as Vitality in my opinion. Now that is just my opinion, you might disagree with me, but we'll say Gambit is much more popular than the Sharks team. Now I didn't choose any Sharks here, but you get the point I'm trying to make, is that we got to spread it around amongst different teams and not just put everything into one team in case that one team does not get overpay. At least if we spread it out, we've got a decent shot of getting overpay somewhere along the lines, because at the end of the day, you're investing into these for the package itself and not the teams on it specifically. However, it doesn't hurt yourself to potentially get a little bit of extra profit or extra overpay based on the teams. Finally then, we've got our last two games involving Navi, and the first one is coming from Vertigo, and that's nothing. There was no maps played on Vertigo that included Navi, just like Inferno, so we couldn't put anything there. Finally though, we've got Ancient, and obviously we had to go with our grand final. There was no other choice. When we've got Nico and Simple facing off against each other, it's a pretty easy choice, and it didn't make sense to go anywhere else. Moving on into our ones that do not include Navi. These ones are a bit more exciting. The Navi ones just kind of had to be there. First up though, heading back to Nuke, and we're going to go ahead and go with the group stage game of Vitality versus Astralis. I think Astralis is one that definitely deserves to be on the list just because they are such a popular team and will always be a popular, well-known team. Plus, we got ZywOo on Vitality, so I think that made it a pretty easy decision for me. Then we've got our Inferno game, and this we went with the semi-final of G2 versus Heroic. Both very popular teams, and obviously we got Nico on G2. I couldn't really pass up any chance to use G2 here that really made sense. I didn't want to include them in every single one because that was not any fun, but I couldn't just pass up G2. I used them in a decent amount of them because they are probably your best chance at getting profit or overpay if you're not including Navi here. Next up then, we've got our overpass game. Now the overpass game, I went ahead with Vitality and Heroic. Now Heroic, in my opinion, is a popular team, but they don't really have any standout players, which is good or bad depending on how you look at it. They'll be a good team, but the greatest teams out there, in my opinion, are known by their greatest player, like Navi and Simple, and G2 and Nico. They're both known by the team, however the team is kind of known by them, so it's a little bit of iffy to throw Heroic on here. However, I think going up against Vitality, you've definitely got two solid teams there, and I couldn't really see anything wrong with it. Next up here, moving on into our Dust 2 game. Now Dust 2, I went with a little bit of an oddball here, and I'll go on to explain it in just a minute. I went with G2 versus Entropic. Now, G2 obviously a solid choice there, but Entropic is a little iffy for some people, but I'm going to explain why I went with Entropic. Now, Entropic is a team that has come out of nowhere. I mean, obviously, they've been on the radar for a bit now. However, if we look back to roughly May, that's when they just kind of jumped out of nowhere. They went with a completely brand new roster, and they jumped all the way from 224 up to 20th. Now that's a pretty significant jump, and they've definitely done decent since then. Right now, they are at number 12, which is their top rank, and I could definitely see them as contenders in the future. You can see with the graph just how much they've jumped. And honestly, it's a team that I could definitely see being decent in the future, and that's the reason I put them on there. Now, I wouldn't put them alone, however, with G2, you could potentially do decent. Next up then, we've got Mirage. Now, Mirage, I had to go with the two most popular teams I could get, one of which was G2 and the other was FaZe. This was in the group stage, but honestly, there was no other better game. FaZe is definitely a very popular team, and they're one I'm sure will probably be contending very soon for that top spot at maybe the next major or maybe the next Blast Premier or whatever is up next. I think they're definitely a team that's going to come back strong. Then we have our Vertigo. Now this one, once again, is a little bit out there too. I went with Tyloo versus Movie Star Riders. Now this sounds very weird, and honestly I could definitely understand that. I went with Tyloo because they are one of the most popular teams in that Asian continent. However, Movie Star Riders was really the best opponent I could get. They have at least a unique fan base, and there are some people that do look at them decent. However, the profit here, or the overpay here, is definitely going to be coming from Tyloo and not the Movie Star Riders. Finally then, I've got the last map on Ancient, and that's going to be NIP versus Copenhagen Flames. Now this one's kind of a double. Obviously, we've got NIP and Copenhagen Flames, which are both very decent teams. However, this was the final overtime game. That it went into overtime. Who goes into the finals? And honestly, if a person is looking for that, it could potentially get some overpaid just because of that later down the line, obviously. But as always, guys, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.